If a decade ago, somebody asked you who the best club in Italy and Europe was, you would say Inter Milan. I mean, the club was just celebrating being the first Italian club to pull off the European treble, the greatest achievement you can get as a club. Not only had they won their 5th Scudetto in a row, but they had also won the Champions League in a shocking fashion, upsetting a dominant Barcelona team that had Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, all being managed by one of the greatest managers of all time, Pep Guardiola. They were on top of the world until they weren't. Despite reaching the highest of highs, Inter failed to do anything significant in the next decade. They remained trophyless, a shadow of the European giants they used to be. From financial scandals to bribery to Romelu Lukaku, this, my friends, is the incredible story of how one of the mightiest football empires fell and then got back up again.
With Eto for company, Diego Milito, fantastic run, oh wonderful goal! Jose Mourinho's moment has come again. A special success for the special one. Victory over the reigning champions whose anthem rings defiantly around the new camp.
Bigger names maybe they have a bigger roster sheet than we do in terms of the money and in terms of the talent and so on and so forth. But as a group, we're going to set our lines, we're going to force turnovers in bad areas, and then we're going to go on the attack from there.
On May 22nd, 2010, a date that will always be remembered in the history of football, Inter Milan beat Bayern Munich in the finals of the Champions League off 2 goals from Diego Milito. Since that glorious moment, things have gone downhill faster than a sled on an icy slope. Inter had a 9-year trophy drought, moving in and out of the Champions League, and never really being in the conversation for the Scudetto. Currently, Inter Milan have risen back up from the ashes, but to truly understand how miraculous this rise back to success has been, I have to show you just how low things got. The darkest decade of their history. The beginning of Inter Milan's downfall actually started in 2006 off the back of the Calciopoli scandal. Due to doping accusations, Italian officials began to investigate Italian clubs for performance-enhancing drugs. Italian government prosecutors began monitoring all the top officials from the big Serie A clubs. While the investigation found no evidence of doping, it found something far worse. Clear evidence that Serie A games were being fixed by pressuring referees, with the 2 main culprits being AC Milan and Juventus. Both were awarded heavy fines. AC Milan was also docked points, and Juventus were relegated to Serie B despite being first in the table. Inter, who finished behind AC Milan and Juventus, were crowned the eventual champions after the investigations ended. Pretty good, right? Not really. Although one might say this was beneficial to Inter Milan, at the end of the day, it was a black mark on Italian football. And it had a lasting impact over the willingness of players to want to join Serie A. Youngsters were now preferring to go to the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, even the French league, rather than Serie A as a result of that decision. While the scandal ruined the reputation of the league, the economic crisis was what really hurt Inter the most. Italian football was hit hard by the European debt crisis in 2009, and the following years were not good for teams that had 100% Italian ownership like Inter Milan. The billionaire owner Massimo Moratti was left with limited options on possible investments for building the club just when it needed it the most. Their lack of finances also meant they were losing to other leagues in terms of being able to lure in talent. In the following years, they sold star players like Wesley Sneijder, Samuel Eto'o, and had to terminate the contract of other players like Julio Cesar, Lucio, Diego Forlan to try and generate cash flow to pay back their debt. I mean, these were some of Inter's best players, the backbone of the team that had just won the treble. For example, the sale of Samuel Eto'o was an out-of-the-blue and ill-advised decision. They got rid of a striker who had scored 53 times across his 2 years at the club when they didn't even have a replacement ready. The other striker at the time, Diego Milito, was coming off of one of his worst individual seasons and was labeled the Bidone d'Oro, which is a direct translation to the golden trash can. With the little budget Inter did have, they made signings during the last decades that were well below the standard of the club, and only a handful had gone on to make a name for themselves at the San Siro. Inter was a club known for having stars like R9, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Samuel Eto'o. Yet at this point, they were employing players like Mauro Zarate, Shaqiri, and a Finnish Nemanja Vidic. If you don't know these players or didn't know they played for Inter, don't worry, there's a reason these guys have been forgotten. Constant transfers in and out disturb the club's stability. as well as the fans' trust in the club's board. You don't need to be a financial or footballing wizard to know that selling good players and buying bad ones isn't the right strategy. These misguided mistakes in the transfer market ended up resulting in the 2010-2011 Champions League winners to finish 6th and 9th in the next 2 seasons respectively. The team continuously struggled to make it back to the Champions League. On top of this, their youth academy was not successful at producing world-class talent. When they did finally have someone come through, like Davide Santon or Philippe Coutinho, they had to be sold so that the owners can use the cash to pay off their debts. Coutinho was probably one of the ones that hurt the most because he ended up becoming a star after leaving Inter Milan. He was an example of how much Inter's youth development had fallen behind compared to the other big European clubs. In addition to the poor decisions made in the transfer market, Inter was making the same mistakes when it came to appointing managers. After finding stability with Roberto Mancini and later moving to Mourinho in search of European success, which he did deliver, the club struggled to find a credible replacement for these 2 managers. After going through just 2 managers in 7 years, the club ended up shifting 6 managers in 4 years, reaching the maximum heights of instability. None of the coaches lasted longer than 7 months, and none of them managed more than 34 games. This lack of continuity had a disastrous effect on the team. I mean, it is literally impossible for a manager to instill his own system in such a short span of time. Nor can he make the necessary transfers to make the roster better. It looked like Inter Milan was doomed, but they are back. After changing owners from Moratti to Eric Tohir and now to Steven Zhang, Inter find themselves in a much more stable position. Steven Zhang was sent over from China to take charge of the Nerazzurri. He paid $307 million to take a 70% stake in Inter, a deal that at the time was seen as the start of Chinese investment in European football. The new ownership would finance Inter's return back at the table with the European elites. Zhang quickly understood the dreams of the club and began investing immediately. His first major flash of success came when he appointed Antonio Conte as the manager in 2019. Conte quickly identified the team's weaknesses and strengths and developed a style of play that he is infamous for, a style based on solid defending and devastating counterattacks. Conte's style of play was so hard for teams to cope with, and his defensive organization hard to break down. In the 2 years Conte spent at the club, he recruited Premier League rejects like Alexis Sanchez, Romelu Lukaku, Christian Eriksen, Matteo Darmian, Victor Moses, and Ashley Young. He turned them into title winners, winning the Scudetto in 2021. Inter had only lost twice in the 2021 season. A 2-1 loss in the Milan derby in October, and a loss to Sampdoria in January. The latter followed by an 18-game unbeaten streak, which saw them collect 14 wins, 11 of them in a row. This was a massive moment for the club as they had gone 9 years without a single trophy. 11 years since their last Scudetto. This victory helped Inter return to Champions League football and ended Juventus' 9-year reign as Italian champions. Since I've criticized so many of Inter's signings, it's only fair that I also give them credit for the successful ones. Inter's 2 most valuable assets in the 2021 season were Romelu Lukaku and Hakimi. After so many years of mediocrity, Inter Milan finally had some of the world's best players in certain positions. Hakimi was widely seen as one of, if not the best right wing back in the world of football. His speed, combined with his excellent engine and crossing, made him the perfect candidate for Conte's system. He was a player that every team in the world wanted, hence the big money move to PSG in the next summer. Lukaku was rejuvenated by Inter. Labeled a flop by Manchester United, Lukaku put himself back in the conversation as one of the best strikers in the world, scoring 30 goals and providing 10 assists in 44 games in the 2021 season. Inter also made 2 other incredible investments, signing Nico Barella and Lautaro Martinez to be the future of the club. Barella was not a household name when he was signed from Cagliari for 12 million euros. He made his debut for Italy in 2018 and developed into one of the best central midfielders in the world at Inter. The combination of his great passing along with his unlimited work engine make him a super valuable player. A few years earlier, Inter had signed Argentina talent Lautaro Martinez from Racing Club for 22 million euros. This was big for Inter because, as we have seen, the Serie A was not a top destination for young stars. So the fact that Inter were able to get an up-and-coming striker who had scored 13 goals in the previous season and was wanted by other top European clubs was a huge step in the right direction. The investment has also proved to be a profitable one. I mean, not only is Lautaro Martinez the current captain of the club, but if he was to be sold, it would be for a hell of a lot more than 22 million euros. With these new signings, Inter began to look ruthless and showed glimpses of the consecutive Scudetto winning teams from 2005 to 2010. Despite Conte leaving, Inter Milan were actually still in a really great position under manager Simone Inzaghi. They made it back to the Champions League final, a feat that they had last achieved in 2010. They did it in incredible fashion too, beating city rivals AC Milan in the semi-finals. The hold-up play of Lukaku, combined with Lautaro Martinez's goal-scoring ability, made him one of the best duos in the world. Although attacks tend to get the highlights, it was really Inter Milan's defense that allowed them to compete with the big European clubs. They lined up in a 3-5-2, with Dumfries and Di Marco acting as fullbacks when they're defending and wingbacks when attacking. Although relatively unknown by the general football population, Acerbi, Bastoni, and Damian did a great job as the three center backs, truly fighting for the badge and putting their heart and soul into every single tackle and block. Add Onana behind these five guys and it becomes evident why Inter conceded so little amount of goals in their Champions League campaign. Inter had the most clean sheets, and with experienced players like Edin Dzeko and Mkhitaryan coming off the bench, it was evident that Inter was back on the rise. Don't take these achievements lightly. This is a team that went 10 years without a single trophy. Their future looks incredibly bright with guys like Lautaro Martinez, Nico Barella, and Bastoni, showing that Inter have all the potential to continue to dominate in the future. They have already started this season off solidly with 6 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie, with one of those wins being an absolute 5-1 spanking against their city rivals AC Milan at the San Siro. They are also top in their Champions League group, tied with Real Sociedad on points, showing that their run to the Champions League final last year was no fluke. New signing Marcus Thuram has already hit the ground running, forming a partnership with Lautaro Martinez that already has Inter fans forgetting all about Romelu Lukaku. New signing Sommer has also done an excellent job in net, replacing Onana. While Onana was spectacular in the Champions League, he often made mistakes in the Serie A games that cost Inter points. So far, Sommer has avoided that, providing consistently good performances in net. They are still not at the level they were at in 2010, but they are much closer to greatness now than they were at any point in the last decade. Sure, they don't have Wesley Sneijder, R9, or Samuel Eto'o, but they are building the foundation for the future. With a Scudetto and Champions League final appearance under their belt, Inter knows they have the potential to get back to being in the conversation with the European elites. To see another team that has fallen from greatness, check out this video right here on Chelsea's downfall.